Today, we're diving into a story that, on the surface, seems straightforward, a tragic death ruled an accident. But when you dig a little deeper, you find a federal investigation, a criminal network, and a really tough question. When something is called an accident, where does the accountability truly lie?
We're going to start with this quote from Matthew Perry's stepfather, Keith Morrison. It's raw, it's powerful, and honestly, it just hangs over this entire story. These words, greedy jackals, point directly at the sense of betrayal and the greed that fueled a criminal case after Perry's death.
And this right here, this is the central conflict of the whole case. You have the official ruling from the medical examiner on one side, but on the other, you have this whole shadow world, a conspiracy that involved doctors, dealers, and even assistants, all part of a network that supplied the very drug that killed him.
So, to really understand the legal storm that followed, we have to start with the official record. What did the authorities actually say happened to Matthew Perry?
Okay, so these are the cold, hard facts from the LA County Medical Examiner. The main cause of death was the acute effects of ketamine, but they also noted other contributing factors, like his heart condition and a medication he was taking for opioid addiction. The final call? An accident. But for investigators, this wasn't the end of the story, it was just the beginning.
And that ruling immediately raised a huge question for law enforcement. If the ketamine found in a system wasn't prescribed, where did it come from? The hunt for that answer started to peel back the layers of a surprisingly complex supply network.
This chain of events is just wild when you see it laid out like this. It starts with a supplier nicknamed the Ketamine Queen. Then it goes through a middleman who gets it to Perry's own personal assistant, who then gives it to Perry. Every single link in that chain was a point of failure, and in the eyes of the law, a potential point of criminal liability.
But here's where the story takes an even more disturbing turn. This wasn't just some back-alley drug deal. 2 doctors were involved, medical professionals, who allegedly used their positions to pump drugs into this illicit supply chain. It's a total betrayal of everything they're supposed to stand for, which of course brings up the question of motive.
So why? Why would doctors, of all people, do something like this? Well, as investigators started digging into their text messages and communications, the motive became chillingly clear. It was all about exploitation, and it was all about money.
I mean, just look at the contrast here. On one side, you have the Hippocratic Oath. It's sacred in medicine. First, do no harm. But on the other side, you have the actions of a doctor who allegedly saw a man's very public struggle with addiction, not as a cry for help, but as a business opportunity.
And if there was any doubt about his mindset, this text message, which came out in court filings, says it all. I wonder how much this moron will pay. It's just jaw-dropping. Prosecutors argued this showed it wasn't a mistake. It was a calculated, predatory act of greed.
And the main supplier, Jasveen Sangha, she had a history too. A really tragic one. This wasn't the first time someone had died after buying ketamine from her. Another customer died back in 2019. And for prosecutors, this was a key point. They argued she knew exactly how dangerous her business was, but she just kept going.
And what happens when the news breaks? Well, you can probably guess. A cover-up. The moment the world learned of Matthew Perry's death, Sangha's alleged first instinct wasn't shock or remorse. It was to try and erase the evidence.
So you put it all together, the greed, the history of disregard, the cover-up, and it all led to a federal prosecution. But as we're about to see, the consequences were wildly different for each person involved.
Okay, this table right here, it tells a huge part of the story. Just look at the massive difference in those sentences. Jasveen Sangha, the main supplier, gets 15 years in prison. But Dr. Plasencia, the one who dealt directly with Perry, he gets 2.5 years. And the other doctor who supplied Plasencia, he got home confinement, no prison time at all. The judge's reasoning was that Sangha's operation was bigger and had been going on for years, making her the most responsible.
But beyond all the legal arguments and sentencing charts, there's the human cost. And in this case, the family made sure their voice was officially heard. Their victim impact statements were filed with the court, making their words a permanent part of the official record.
And that's where we need to focus now, on the most important part of this whole story, the unfixable grief of a family that feels their son's struggle was exploited by people who should have been there to help him.
Matthew's mother and stepfather tried to put their grief into words. How do you measure grief? Memories are like little knives. It just speaks to this deep, constant pain that doesn't really go away.
His father and stepmother offered this perspective, and it's just heartbreaking.
For them, it wasn't only the loss of their son, it was the end of their entire family line. That sense of finality is just devastating.
And here we are, full circle, back to those greedy jackals. This final thought captures what was stolen. Matthew Perry was planning his future, what his family called a third act, and they believe it was ripped away from him by the greed of others. So as this legal chapter closes, we're left with a really tough question. When a death is officially ruled an accident, but you have a criminal network that's held responsible for providing the means, what does justice even look like? It's a question that really challenges how we think about addiction, accountability, and the truly immeasurable price of a life cut short.